Welcome to Fred's 10-minute marketing courses. Today we are discussing, is OpenClaw-like agents Apple's next big thing? Written by Fred James. So, right now, millions of people are essentially handing over the digital keys to their homes to complete strangers on the internet.
Yeah, it's wild.
And it's all because of this overwhelming fear of missing out, really, because as a senior manager, when I look at the business landscape today, AI agents are undoubtedly the hottest trend. Every single week, there's, a new startup promising to automate your entire workflow.
Oh, at least one a week. Probably more.
Right. But there's a massive gap between the marketing hype we see online and the actual commercial reality of deploying these tools on the ground.
Yeah, and that gap is exactly what we're exploring in our discussion today, because I see this daily on the marketing front lines. The panic is just palpable.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, designers, copywriters, strategists, everyone is rushing to install these open source AI assistants like OpenClaw,
Right.
because there's this looming dread, right? This fear that if you don't have an AI agent working for you right now, you are going to be replaced by someone who does.
The classic FOMO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Fred James brings forward a really fascinating insight in his analysis. He points out that this chaotic, highly experimental market of open source agents isn't actually taking over the world.
Oh, no, not at all.
What they're really doing is running a massive unpaid beta testing program for Apple. They're literally paving the road for Apple's next giant profit engine.
Which is just a brilliant strategic move by Apple. But, to really understand their long game, we first have to look at the painful realities of deploying these open source tools in a real business environment today.
And it is painful.
Very. Because whether you are running a B2B enterprise organization or a B2C consumer brand, the way these current tools operate is a massive liability. Fred James frames this beautifully with his master key problem.
Yes, the master key metaphor. It is a terrifying reality when you actually break it down for the listener. Because using a current open source agent is literally like taking the master key to your house and handing it to a freelance cleaner you just met online like 5 minutes ago.
Right. And just hoping for the best.
Exactly. Because to get these open source agents to do complex automated tasks like, say, reading your incoming emails, pulling specific data from a spreadsheet, and then drafting a custom response, you have to give them deep system permissions.
You have to let them see everything.
You do. You are giving them the keys to your digital house, letting them rummage through your private drawers.
And in technical terms, you are often granting them root access, which for anyone not deeply entrenched in IT, think of root access like giving someone the master combination to the bank vault rather than just a key to the front lobby.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because root access means the software can see and touch everything. Your personal files, your passwords, your secure B2B client lists. You just have to cross your fingers and hope the software only cleans the living room like it promised.
And doesn't steal a TV.
Exactly. And in a corporate environment, data security is the bedrock. If an employee hands over root access to an experimental piece of software, that is a catastrophic breach of protocol. You'd be fired instantly.
Oh, absolutely. And even if a business decides to, ignore that massive security risk, the daily operational friction is just a nightmare.
Tell me about it.
Let's look at a standard office environment. Say a frontline marketer builds a brilliant automated workflow using an open source agent on their Mac. It works perfectly, right? They're thrilled.
Sure.
So they want to scale it. They share it with the sales team. But the sales team is operating on Windows, and the back-end engineers are using Ubuntu Linux. So what happens? The workflow instantly breaks.
It shatters. Because every operating system has a completely different underlying logic, a different file structure, totally different security protocols. The system that works perfectly on a Mac just does not speak the language of Windows.
No, it doesn't. And to fix that breakage, to make these open source agents actually communicate across different platforms, the user inevitably has to open up the terminal.
Oh boy. Which is the ultimate marketing taboo.
It really is.
Asking everyday consumers or business people to open up a command line interface, that black screen with the scrolling white code, is a complete non-starter.
People are terrified of it.
They are, because human brains are visual. We rely on spatial memory, which is exactly why we use graphical user interfaces with folders and little desktop icons.
Right, we like to click and drag.
Exactly. A command line requires rote memorization of complex syntax. If you miss a single semicolon, the entire system crashes. So asking a user to manually configure software dependencies in a terminal, well, it destroys user adoption instantly.
You just can't do it.
You cannot scale a B2C product if the consumer feels like they need a computer science degree just to turn the thing on. The moment that black screen pops up, you have lost 99% of your market.
Yeah, the technical friction is incredibly high. But there's another layer to this that is completely stopping mass market adoption. It's this deep psychological and financial friction.
Ah, token anxiety.
Yes. Fred James calls this token anxiety. And to really grasp why this is such a roadblock, we need to understand how AI actually processes information.
Oh,
Because, AI does not read sentences the way you or I do.
right.
It breaks text, images, and logic down into tokens. Think of a token like a chunk of a word or a specific syllable. Every single time the AI reads a prompt, thinks about a problem, and generates a response, it consumes these tokens.
And crucially, you, the user, pay for the computing power required to process every single one of those tokens.
Exactly. And Fred James has this brilliant analogy. He compares watching an AI agent consume those tokens in the background to sitting in heavy traffic and watching a taxi meter spin out of control.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right. You're no longer focused on the destination. You are just staring at the meter, sweating over the escalating cost. If you remember the early days of the internet, it's the exact same anxiety you felt when logging into a pay-per-minute internet cafe.
Yes.
The clock is ticking,
Yeah.
and your wallet is draining.
And as a senior manager, that invisible taximeter is where I draw a hard line. It creates a massive financial liability.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, let me pose a scenario to you, the listener. How can your business calculate a return on investment, an ROI, when the cost of an automated task is completely unpredictable?
You can't. You cannot build a budget around a moving target.
You absolutely cannot. Let's say you implement a workflow, and today it costs $2 in token computing power to execute. That's fine. That fits the budget perfectly.
But $2 is nothing.
But tomorrow, the open source agent encounters a weird file format it doesn't recognize. It gets confused, gets stuck in an infinite logic loop, constantly querying the server to fix its own error.
Oh, no.
And it burns through $50 in computing power in the background before anyone even notices.
Yeah.
It is essentially an invisible corporate credit card with no limit.
Which is terrifying.
No management team in the world will ever approve a system with uncapped financial risk for mass deployment. Never.
Which leaves this massive vacuum in the market. The open source tools are drowning in security risks, technical roadblocks, and unpredictable costs. And this brings us to a beautiful twist in our deep dive into the source material.
The walled garden.
Yes.
Okay.
Suddenly, Apple's heavily criticized closed ecosystem transforms into their absolute biggest strategic advantage.
It really does. Because the architecture they have been building for years was practically designed for this exact moment. Apple has always relied on a built-in sandbox environment. Think about tools that have been on the Mac for years, like AppleScript or Shortcuts.
And a sandbox isn't just a cute metaphor here, right?
Mhm.
It is a literal structural barrier in the software.
Right. Physically speaking, a sandbox means separating memory space and heavily restricting file system access. The software operates inside an invisible, unbreakable wall built deep into the operating system.
So it can't just wander around.
Exactly. It's given a specific set of toys the files you explicitly allow it to see, but it is completely blocked from touching the core operating system or your secure data enclaves. The AI agent is trapped in the sandbox. It cannot open the gate and wander into the rest of your digital house to rummage through your banking passwords.
Which is a level of security that open source tools simply cannot guarantee right now.
They can't. Even other massive tech giants like Microsoft are incredibly hesitant to grant root access to experimental AI across their operating systems. So Apple's famously slow, calculated approach, it's highly strategic.
They're just waiting it out.
They are actively refusing to rush out a half-baked open source agent. Instead, they are watching the open source developers stumble over all these security flaws while they wait for their sandboxed architecture to be the perfect secure environment.
But wait, what about that cross-platform communication nightmare we discussed earlier? The issue of making a Mac talk to Windows or Ubuntu Linux.
Oh, Apple simply avoids the trap.
Really?
Yeah, they do not bother trying to build a new, complex protocol from scratch to bridge those operating systems. They outsource that communication to secure messaging apps that already exist and function perfectly, like Telegram or iMessage.
Oh, wow.
They just let encrypted messaging handle the cross-platform transport. Problem solved.
That is so smart. And the irony here is just staggering. I mean, for the last 15 years, marketers and tech reviewers have complained relentlessly that Apple's ecosystem was a walled garden.
Oh, constantly.
They said it was too restricted, too anti-competitive, too closed off. And now, That exact high wall is the only thing that actually makes giving an AI the keys to the house feel safe for the everyday consumer.
The paradigm has entirely shifted.
Right.
The walled garden is no longer a prison, it is a fortress.
A fortress, exactly. But, having a secure fortress only solves the security problem. Computing all those millions of tokens still costs an absolute fortune in server power.
It really does.
So how does Apple solve that taximeter problem for the consumer without just bleeding cash?
Well, this brings us to a pure business mechanics observation from Fred James, and it highlights Apple's ultimate market advantage. He notes, Apple is so poor, all they have is money.
I love that quote. It sounds like a joke, but it perfectly explains their strategy.
It does. They have the massive capital reserves required to simply absorb these server costs entirely. They don't need to charge you by the minute like a dial-up internet cafe.
Right, because they just bundle those back-end computing costs into a predictable iCloud subscription.
Yeah.
Or they hide the cost entirely within the premium price of a brand new device.
Exactly. Notice how Apple Intelligence currently operates. They do not charge you an extra separate fee every time you ask it to summarize a document. You do not see a meter ticking up.
No taximeter.
Apple treats that incredibly expensive software processing essentially as a massive marketing expense. They eat the cost of the AI computing to drive the sales of their extremely high-margin hardware. They want to trigger a massive Mac and iPhone replacement cycle.
So it's like, give away the brilliant token-hungry software so consumers are literally forced to buy the $2,000 piece of glass and aluminum required to run it.
Precisely. It is a classic funnel.
Yeah.
But selling high-margin hardware is just the top of the funnel. The real end game, the true monetization engine, is what comes next, the skills or agents store.
Oh, this is the big reveal.
It is. Let me give you an analogy for how this works. Imagine you own a massive, highly secure luxury shopping mall. You do not want to take the financial risk of designing, manufacturing, and shipping all the clothing yourself.
Right, too much overhead.
Exactly. So you let thousands of independent boutiques take all that risk. They figure out what the customers want, they build the product, and you simply charge them 30% of their revenue just for the privilege of opening a storefront inside your secure, high-traffic mall.
Which is exactly how the App Store revolutionized mobile software back in the late 2000s. I mean, before the App Store, getting third-party software onto a mobile phone was chaotic, risky, and full of viruses.
It was the Wild West.
It was. Apple created a locked ecosystem, invited third-party developers to take the risk of building the apps, and then just collected a toll on every single transaction.
And an ecosystem-locked store for downloadable AI agents will be Apple's next literal money printer. We are seeing similar moves across the industry, actually, like Google using Gemini to fortify its own ecosystem.
Right. Everyone is trying to build their own mall.
But Apple's hardware lock-in makes this a guaranteed revenue stream. They will let all these experimental open-source developers figure out the hard parts right now. And when the technology matures, Apple provides the secure store to sell them.
And takes their cut.
They will take a massive cut of every specialized agent downloaded to help your business with its B2B sales forecasting, or an agent designed to manage your B2C marketing analytics.
You let third parties take all the development risk, and you collect the toll at the gate because you own the secure fortress. It is a brilliant business model.
It really is.
But this deep integration of hardware and secure agent software, it's going to do much more than just make Apple a lot of money. It is going to fundamentally change our day-to-day relationship with technology itself.
How so?
Well, we're looking at a permanent transition from being an operator of technology to a commander of technology.
Okay, let's break down what that actually means for your daily life. Because right now, to get work done, you are an operator. Your bottleneck is your typing speed and your knowledge of software menus.
Exactly. You manually switch between 5 different software applications. You click specific buttons. You drag and drop files from a folder into an email. You manually format columns in a spreadsheet.
It's tedious.
It is.
Yeah.
You're performing the manual labor of the digital world. But the days of doing that are ending. Through an upgraded Siri and system-level agents deeply integrated into that sandbox architecture, you will simply dictate high-level goals.
Think of it as transitioning from being a bricklayer to becoming the architect. You no longer mix the mortar and lay the bricks yourself. You hand the blueprint to the foreman and say, build the wall.
I love that. You will just tell your device, pull the sales data from last week, format it into a presentation, highlighting the key drops in revenue, and send it to the executive team.
And it just does it.
And the agents will just do it. They will seamlessly navigate across different apps within that secure sandbox. That redefines what the word computer actually means for the mass consumer. It stops being a tool you manipulate and becomes an entity you manage.
And this brings up a very grounded, sobering management reality. When you no longer have to push the buttons yourself, your value in the workplace shifts entirely.
Oh, completely.
If your only skill is knowing the keyboard shortcuts to format a pivot table, an AI agent will replace you.
Your value shifts from how to use the software to what instructions you are capable of giving.
Exactly. The premium is no longer on the person who executes the task. The premium is on the person who has the strategic vision to command the system effectively. Can you clearly articulate a complex business goal? Do you understand which data matters to the executive team and why it matters?
Right.
That is a very different skill set than manual data entry.
It really reframes everything we're seeing in the news right now. All this messy, chaotic, open source experimentation is just the messy construction phase of a totally new reality.
It is just the scaffolding.
Yeah, the scaffolding will eventually come down and the polished, secure fortress will be left standing.
Which leaves you with a critical question to ponder as we wrap up our analysis. If our devices are quietly doing all the heavy lifting in the background, and companies like Apple are managing the security and running the store, what new, irreplaceable skills will you need to develop? How do you stay valuable in a world where everyone has a genius-level assistant at their fingertips?
Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. See you next time.